Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to this Retail Traffic hosted webinar entitled Achieving Real-World Sustainability, Smart Water Management Case Study, presented and sponsored by HydroPoint and Regency Centers. My name is David Bodamer, Editor-in-Chief of Retail Traffic. I will be your moderator for today's webinar. I would like to remind all of you that if at any time you experience audio difficulties or problems advancing the slides, simply press your F5 key to refresh your console. I would also like to encourage all of you to ask our panel questions. As a question occurs to you, simply type it into the box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will be addressing as many of your questions at the end of our presentation as possible. With that, I would like to introduce our presenters. First, we have Mark Peternell. Mark is Vice President of Sustainability for Regency Centers, a real estate investment trust specializing in developing, owning, and operating grocery-anchored and community shopping centers. Under his leadership, Regency has cost-effectively reduced their use of natural resources by implementing operational process improvements and new technologies, including smart irrigation controllers, LED parking lot lighting, and network lighting controls. Regency has embraced the principles of LEED certification at many of its new developments, with 3 projects certified to date and many others underway. Prior to Regency, Mark worked for Forest City Enterprises, where he was responsible for the development of the company's retail portfolio in Denver, including the first open-air lifestyle center to achieve LEED certification. Mark serves as a member of the U.S. Green Building Council's LEED for Retail Committee, ICSC's Environmental Subcommittee, and Real Estate Roundtable's Sustainability Policy Advisory Committee. He holds an MBA with a concentration in real estate and a Master's of Science and Bachelor's of Arts in Environmental Studies from the University of Colorado at Boulder. Joining Mark, we have Chris Warfield. Chris is Director of Professional Services for HydroPoint Data Systems. In this role, he plays an instrumental part in implementing smart water management solutions that address customer-specific challenges and meet their cost and water savings objectives. Chris's 25 years of experience in the green industry spans the fields of landscape irrigation, landscape design, turf agronomy, plant pathology, and arboriculture. An industry educator, Chris's recent speaking engagements include moderating several seminars at the ONLA Central Environmental Conference. Additionally, he developed and led classes that were accredited by the Ohio Department of Agriculture for CEU credit. Chris is an active member of the North Coast chapter of the California Landscape Contractors Association, and he received a BA from Capital University. With that, I would like to turn things over to Chris Warfield. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thanks, David. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. I'd particularly like to thank Mark Peternell, who will share Regency's story about how something as mundane as irrigation has brought about significant savings to his company's operating expenses. We'll hear more about that in a moment. First, let's look at some of the macro reasons for taking steps to use water more efficiently. Water is not only a seriously constrained resource, but is also intrinsically tied to energy use. According to the EPA, an average of 4 watt-hours of power is consumed with every gallon of water. Managing our water use and ensuring that water is applied only when and where it is needed also prevents runoff pollution, which is devastating to our local ecosystems. Let's take a quick look at what HydroPoint customers have been able to achieve by managing their outdoor water use. HydroPoint customers know that going green does not have to be the expensive route. In fact, conservation actually cuts costs. With its rapid payback, smart water management is a perfect example of this. HydroPoint customers reduce their operating expenses even while they are protecting natural resources. As we're about to hear from Mark, aligning your environmental and financial goals will help assure the success of your sustainability strategy. Mark, over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you. It's a pleasure to speak to you today about Regency's Smart Water Management Initiative. I'll explain why we are looking outdoors to save water, why we selected HydroPoint Data Systems WeatherTRAK Smart Controllers as one component to our comprehensive solution, what factors we use to decide which properties are good candidates for smart water management, and what the results have been, including key lessons learned along the way. But first, let me back up and give a quick introduction to Regency and our broader sustainability platform. As David mentioned, we're a leading national owner, operator, and developer of grocery-anchored and community shopping centers. Our portfolio spans 396 centers and 53 million square feet. We have a national reach, but we back that model up with local expertise, as we have offices in 17 locations across the U.S., and we are a publicly traded company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Greengenuity is our commitment to develop and operate environmentally sustainable shopping centers that utilize an evolving set of best practices in building design, construction, operations, and maintenance. We formally launched this initiative in 2007, but this follows a long history of commitment to quality and innovation. We have a commitment to LEED certify our ground-up new development projects. In our operating portfolios, our goal is to minimize the use of natural resources. One example of this is our Smart Water Management Initiative. So why we looked outside for water savings? For one, it's a significant and increasing operating expense. In 2010, our total annual expenses for water and sewer was nearly $9 million, which amounts to 7.8% of our total operating expenses across our portfolio. We estimate that more than 50% of this water use is specifically for irrigation, and the remaining 50% is split amongst several different interior appliances, many of which are vital to tenant operations. There's so much focus on energy conservation, and for good reason, but we believe water is an equally critical and compelling conservation opportunity. In fact, across the U.S., on average, water rates are increasing faster than energy, and as Chris already addressed, saving water also saves energy. When we look outside for irrigation conservation, we look at 5 different opportunities. I'll quickly address each of these. The first one is to reduce the size of the landscape area. Obviously, if you reduce the size of the landscape area, you reduce the demand for your water budget. But in fact, the reverse trend is actually occurring as there's increased desire for more and more green space. The second one is you hear a lot about using native or drought-tolerant plants. While this is certainly a best practice in our new developments, we found it to be very expensive in a retrofit situation. And we also have to balance the aesthetics and durability of our plant selection for something that will be well maintained in a shopping center environment. Third would be looking for non-potable water sources. Certainly a great opportunity and something we expect to see more and more of, but right now it's only available in limited instances, and you also have space constraints for on-site water storage and retrofit situations in some urban sites. Next would be high-efficiency irrigation spray bodies and emitters. A lot of new exciting technology on the market, but also can be pricey in a retrofit situation, which lastly leads us to smart water management. So on this slide, I want to define how Regency looks at smart water management. There's really several critical components. The first, and what we're largely here to talk about today, are smart or weather-based controllers, which adjust the frequency and duration of your irrigation based on a variety of local weather factors. Second is a rain sensor, which is another piece of equipment that's situated on the property that shuts down the irrigation system during precipitation. Third, and something that we'll talk more about momentarily, would be the addition of a flow sensor and a master valve. A flow sensor measures the flow rate and quantity of water through the system. When combined with a smart controller with two-way communication, it can alert the property owner or property manager to high or low flows in the system that may occur when a broken irrigation line or you have a valve issue. It's basically a form of insurance policy. And the last one, which is not listed here, is having a smart water manager on the property to help manage that water, which we'll also talk more about. Looks like we have a poll question, so David, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, we wanted to quickly ask the audience, how many of you include flow sensors and master valves in your smart water management solution? So you can click on the slides and submit your answer.
we'll come back to that poll question here in a few slides. So I've mentioned why we've looked outside for water savings. Let me talk a little bit more about specifically why smart water management has made sense for Regency. We found that there's widespread practice of overwatering at many of our properties. I think this is somewhat due to the myth that more water is better. And secondly, to accurately adjust a conventional irrigation timer is difficult and time-consuming. Next, we found that our smart water management initiatives have a relatively low cost and quick payback. They're also simple to retrofit in an existing shopping center, and oftentimes are eligible for lucrative utility rebate programs. I next want to give you just a quick comparison, comparing a smart controller retrofit at one of our shopping centers to a low-flow plumbing retrofit at a different shopping center, but within the same water utility district. Obviously, these numbers, both the cost and the savings and the payback, will vary from property to property in a number of different factors. But just to give you a sense of what we've found through our experiences at a particular property where we implemented a smart controller, our payback was just over 2 years. That was based on a net project cost of $11,400 and an annual savings of approximately $5,200. If you compare that to a similar shopping center where we retrofitted our plumbing fixtures, the total project cost was close to $19,000 and only resulted in a $4,300 annual savings, a payback of 4.4 years. I want to preface this slide by saying that while we chose HydroPoint Data Systems WeatherTRAK as a critical component to our smart water initiative, it's not the only solution. We decided it works best for our needs, but by endorsing WeatherTRAK today, we are not knocking any of the other technologies on the market. I encourage all of you to explore the options and decide what technology best suits your property's needs. Back in 2007, we piloted 3 different controllers at 6 properties, 2 properties for each of the following smart controllers: the WeatherMatic Smart Line System, the Rainmaster Eagle Eye Central, and HydroPoint WeatherTRAK. Based on the results of this pilot, we decided to standardize our smart water initiative with WeatherTRAK. The savings that we achieved on the 2 WeatherTRAK properties were higher. We had some maintenance concerns with smart controller solutions that use an on-site weather station, and we also really value the two-way communication component that is an integral part to what WeatherTRAK offers. And lastly, their national support and pricing structure met our needs well as a national real estate investment trust. So what properties and what criteria do we use to decide which properties are good candidates for smart water management? The first thing you need to look at is the economic criteria. Properties that have high consumption and or high water rates are generally going to have quicker paybacks. In addition to looking at the base water rate, you also want to look at properties that have tiered rate structures where you pay a higher rate as your consumption goes up. The second thing would be the cost to install the product. The cost is going to vary from property to property based on the number of controllers that need to be retrofitted and the number of stations for each controller. You also have a cost of installing flow sensing capabilities if that's something you want to do, which will also vary significantly in a retrofit situation based on the distance from the point of connection to the controller and the amount of trenching that needs to take place. And then third criteria is the availability of rebates, which really can bring down your first cost anywhere from 25 to 50% depending on the specific rebate program. In addition to the economic criteria, we also look closely at the condition of the existing irrigation system and may decide to forego a smart water management retrofit at a property that has a lot of deferred maintenance in the irrigation system. And the last factor is the willingness and ability of the landscape maintenance contractor to manage this smart system. Since 2007, we have retrofitted 93 of our properties with smart water management technology. Across the board, on average, we've reduced our irrigation consumption by approximately 25%. However, I do want to point out that the savings at these 93 properties has varied quite significantly, ranging from 0 to well over 50%. There's a lot of different factors that may lead to that variance. One, as I just mentioned, is the condition of the existing irrigation system. Two, are the historical irrigation practices. What a smart controller strives to do is apply the right amount of water to the landscape. So if you have a property that was historically underwatered, you may actually end up using more water with a smart controller. Three would be variable weather conditions. If you happen to install your smart water management technology in a year of unseasonably dry conditions, you may also see a spike in your consumption for a period of time until you get back to normal conditions. And the last factor that contributed to the variance that we saw is that we've seen better results on properties where we have experienced irrigation contractors, whether they were familiar with the WeatherTRAK system or some other form of smart technology. That has paid dividends because the human component is still very critical. Since 2007, across these 93 properties, we've reduced our irrigation consumption by 180 million gallons, which has resulted in approximately $560,000 combined water and sewer savings for the company since 2007. And again, across the board, the average payback at these 93 properties has been just about 2 years. So quickly, I want to highlight one case study. El Cerrito Plaza is a project in the Bay Area of California. We installed 3 WeatherTRAK controllers early in 2009. We worked with the utility district there, East Bay Mud, to not only secure a rebate of $3,300, but they also did a pre-site inspection and gave us conservation recommendations and came back out and did a post-installation survey of the site. The net cost of this project was $9,600. And in the first year, in 2009, the first year after installing the 3 WeatherTRAK controllers, we reduced our water bill by $7,000. This was a 54% reduction from the prior year, from 2008, which you can see on the graph. But the amazing thing here, and this I think attests also to that variability that I was mentioning, it was a 73% reduction over 2007. And at this particular project, this initiative had a 16-month payback. So I want to now go to some lessons learned. While we've achieved great savings and had a lot of success, one of the things that we've certainly learned is that you're not going to have consistent savings on every site. And in fact, water consumption may increase on certain sites based on those factors that I've already mentioned. You may not see the savings that you're striving for on properties with deferred maintenance issues. I like to think of it as putting a smart controller on a dumb system may not be a good idea. The next point is that smart water management is more than just smart controllers. We just queried the audience on whether or not you include flow sensors on your system. That's something we'll come to in just a moment. But certainly at Regency, we found that the flow sensor capability is an important part of the overall system. While it does not guarantee you any additional savings, it's a nice insurance policy to have on properties, especially like ours, where we don't have on-site management that might be able to detect major or catastrophic leaks in the irrigation system. Another point that's extremely important, and again, something that we learned as we went, is not to underestimate the human factor. I think there's several things here at play, but first one is you need to overcome the myth that more water is better for the landscape. The second thing you have to realize is you are implementing a high-tech solution. It's a computer system, and oftentimes we had contractors that were not very technologically savvy, and it took some training and some education, which Chris is going to talk more about, to overcome that technological barrier. And then there's also the cultural aspect, which requires a shift in perception from just being irrigators to actually being smart water managers. So here are the results from the query. How many of you include flow sensors and master valve in your smart water management solution? It looks like it's about split 50-50 between those that do and those that don't. And like I said, we have not included flow sensors on all of our properties because they can be difficult to retrofit depending on the amount of trenching that's required. But we have found that if we can do it for a reasonable cost, it's an important part of our solution. And I'm going to wrap up with continuing on some lessons learned and conclusions. Decide which type of controller is best for your needs. As I mentioned, there are many different types of smart controllers on the market, and you need to decide which one is the best based on your unique set of needs. Once you know what those needs are, establish a technical specification that meets those needs. I did want to mention that the EPA's WaterSense program is close to finalizing a specification for smart controllers. You can go to their website and find out more information about those criteria. Next would be to start with properties in your portfolio that have the highest use and or the highest rates, because that's going to be your quickest payback, and maximize the use of rebate dollars. Make sure you have buy-in from your maintenance contractor, and if you don't, find somebody that's willing to be a smart water manager and not just an irrigator. You can do that by including requirements for what it's going to take to maintain the smart water management system that you choose in your service contract. And lastly, regardless of which technology you decide to implement, get started doing something because it's a compelling opportunity. It's important for both economic reasons as well as environmental reasons. I'm now going to hand it over to Chris, who's going to provide more detailed information on the WeatherTRAK system.
Thanks, Mark. There are three key components to HydroPoint's smart water management solution. It begins with high-resolution weather data. It's gathered in real time. An ET, or evapotranspiration value, is generated with resolution down to 1 square kilometer. The ET is sent out to our WeatherTRAK controllers, where the scheduling engine calculates the correct amount of water to be applied on a station-by-station basis. This occurs daily and includes rain pause if the site has experienced a recent significant rainfall event. And then central internet management. The controller in the field uses a GPRS modem to communicate back and forth in real time with our central server. Essentially, it works like a cell phone. Full off-site control. The central web page allows the end user to make real-time changes to the controller in the field, such as turning off the irrigation for an event or changing the irrigation schedule. The landscape is a living, dynamic entity, and this can cause damage to an irrigation system, often damaging wiring in the field, which makes the zone inoperable. WeatherTRAK has built-in diagnostics that will provide alerts for damaged field wires and valve solenoids. With central access, you and your landscaper can receive an email or SMS text alert identifying which zones have issues. You will also receive notification when the alert has been cleared. The WeatherTRAK ET Pro 2 series controllers also have built-in flow functionality. If the site has a flow sensor or one is installed at the time of the controller retrofit, the WeatherTRAK Pro 2 will learn flow and monitor for no flow, leak detect, and mainline break events. Alert notification is provided by email or SMS text, and you can set preferences on when to receive these alerts. Central Internet Management has full reporting capability for current or past alerts, water usage if a flow sensor is connected, as well as program settings and run times. Here are the pieces of the puzzle on how it all works. HydroPoint provides the third largest weather service in the United States behind the federal government and the Weather Channel. We collect weather information from over 45,000 weather stations on a continual basis, 24/7, every day of the year. This data is downloaded to our Climate Center via a network of NOAA, or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration satellites. The raw data is used to calculate the ET values using the Penman-Monteith method. This is the most accurate way to calculate reference ET. HydroPoint has abundant redundant supercomputers running our ET Everywhere program to take that data and calculate the ET down to a 1 square kilometer resolution. We then apply a microzone grid that overlays the U.S. and Canada. Your latitude and longitude determine your microzone, so you receive the highly accurate ET values used to calculate your water schedule without the need for an on-site weather station, which requires ongoing maintenance. Every WeatherTRAK controller includes the built-in scheduling engine, and this utilizes the ET data to calculate the runtime and the cycle and soak for each individual zone based on the site and zone-specific parameters programmed at the time of installation. WeatherTRAK controllers are so accurate that they have qualified for exemption from water restrictions in several states. You should check with your local water agencies for possible restrictions and exemptions. So why weather-based irrigation makes a difference? In a standard dumb controller, the landscaper sets the time for each station and lets it run all year with very little change. With the WeatherTRAK, run times are adjusted daily based on weather. There are 4 main data points that are used to calculate ET, or evapotranspiration: wind, solar radiation, temperature, and humidity. Competitors will use less accurate methods to calculate ET values, including an on-site weather station, which requires ongoing maintenance, or historical ET, and then may only provide ET for a zip code instead of our highly accurate 1 square kilometer grid method. These data points are highly variable and can be significantly different across a zip code. For instance, would the temperature, humidity, and solar radiation in downtown Atlanta be the same as the outskirts of the city? The zone-specific parameters that get programmed into the controller, either at the controller or via the central web page, are sprinkler type, precipitation rate of the sprinkler, the efficiency of the sprinkler, the plant type, the soil type, the sun exposure, and the slope. All of these factors are used by the scheduling engine to calculate the new, highly accurate irrigation schedule every day, 365 days a year. Why does all of this matter to you? With WeatherTRAK and Central Internet Management, you can manage the outdoor water use and its associated costs across your entire portfolio or site. From the web page, you can see every controller, its program settings, its current runtime schedule, and its system alerts at a glance. The Manage page that you see on your screen now is one of several views on the Central Web interface, and offers a quick, easy irrigation schedule overview, including the daily ET, station names, daily run times, including cycle and soak, and the days when it will irrigate. In the mode column, you can check to make sure your stations are in auto mode to ensure maximum savings. You can also make quick changes to programming from this page. You can navigate to the page you need using page buttons at the top or the quick links located on each page. If a water district implements water day restrictions, you can quickly make the program adjustments with Central Internet Management by going to the program page and avoid fines for noncompliance. You might not even need this feature because HydroPoint customers are often exempt from water day restrictions. You can also monitor the programming to make sure it does not get changed to irrigate outside the restricted times and avoid fines and poor public image. You can dispatch maintenance personnel for system repairs with the alert notification feature. Active alerts are displayed on the home page and on the Manage page as well. From the Reports page, you can create reports for run times, active or past alerts, and program settings for review with site managers or your landscape contractors to enhance system efficiency and achieve improved reduction in water use and cost. Mark mentioned the lessons Regency learned during the installation process. Well, HydroPoint learned some lessons as well, and they are reflected in our new implementation process and the follow-up training program. HydroPoint's professional services offers managed implementations so you don't have to handle the logistics of a full rollout. Our project managers provide start-to-finish management of the process on a site-by-site basis. Here are the implementation steps that our professional services can manage for you. We conduct a controller survey. It's an on-site inspection of the existing controllers to determine locations, type, size of controller, and check of the landscape and system conditions. A pre-installation training for the contractor. Designated installer will receive training on the correct installation, setup, and programming of WeatherTRAK controllers. An installation agreement. We can provide installation services for you with our network of certified contractors. Installation of the WeatherTRAK controller. Controllers are installed to a specific scope of work and the electrical connections meet NEC code. Activation of the ET everywhere. The ET service is activated at the time of installation so you can start to achieve savings immediately. Programming and setup. Controller is programmed for existing site conditions at the time of installation. Controller inspection report. Your new controller will be inspected to certify that it is fully operational, receiving ET, and is online. The post-installation training. The operator training is provided after installation has been completed so that they're comfortable with using the controller. Mark talked about the human factor. We agree that it is essential to change attitudes about landscape water use. Based in part on the feedback from Regency and other customers, we have created HydroPoint University as a way to offer smart water manager training to the maintenance contractor. It's an online training series conducted live and is designed to be taken in sequence for a complete training program. It is a comprehensive training on how to use the WeatherTRAK ET Pro 2 Series controller as a water management and landscape maintenance tool. It also qualifies for continuing education units with some state agencies, and we continue to actively submit to various agencies around the country for certification credits. With HydroPoint's WeatherTRAK ET Pro 2 central controllers and HydroPoint University, your net results are reduced water use, reduced runoff, leadership and environmental stewardship, a quick ROI, and an ongoing reduction in operating expenses. Now let me turn it back to David.
Great, thank you. A few of you have already submitted questions, so we're going to get to as many of these as we can. The first question I have here is, how do you ensure security of the controllers since you're using the internet to access and update?
Okay, each operator will have a login, the login and password done via the web, and that's handled through our customer service. So all changes to that access are handled directly with our customer service.
Okay, thank you. There's also a question here that it looks like it's inspired by the poll results. With 45% answering NA, is irrigate or not to irrigate the question?
So irrigate or not to irrigate is the question. Well, the flow sensor question is designed around if you're doing a replacement as a retrofit. Are you specing a flow sensor and master valve as a part of that or not? You can still achieve savings with the Smart Water Manager or WeatherTRAK ET Pro 2 controller. The real benefit is you see that flow data. You can manage to that. If your water agency has set a water budget, you can program that into the WeatherTRAK ET Pro 2 and irrigate to that budget. And then Mark's significant point is the insurance policy. If you have a mainline break and somebody's not aware of it, you can run risk of significant financial burden due to those mainline breaks.
Okay. Another question I have here is that you mentioned the importance of educating the landscape contractors. How can the industry do a better job with this?
Let me start, and then I'll pass it on. I think, in the first installations that we did, we really bought into the full professional services model with HydroPoint, and they were the ones that went out to the site and did the surveys and really, did the programming of the controllers. And next thing you know is we had a new piece of technology installed at the property, and our existing landscape and irrigation professionals, while they did go through the training, they really didn't take ownership for the system. So we tried it differently in 2009 at those retrofits, where we really tried to get the professionals, contractors involved in the process up front. They were asked to actually provide the field survey information. HydroPoint still provide customer support and provide the technology, but the landscapers were responsible for the installations, and then ultimately worked hand in hand with HydroPoint to do the initial programming and setup of the controller. So even that small sort of change management strategy, I think, was helpful. That being said, we're continuing to try and find ways to educate both our new contractors that are coming online as we retrofit additional properties and some of the contractors that are still working at the properties that have implemented smart water solutions.
And then something else also, it's kind of an industry-wide, and Mark had alluded to it in his presentation, areas where around the country where water restrictions, drought, increasing water rates, tiered rates, have pushed smart irrigation to the fore. So smart water management, Mark mentioned new types of sprinkler heads, high-efficiency sprinkler heads, etc. The areas where we have seen these heavy restrictions on water use or rationing almost, those areas are much more up to speed with smart water management solutions. Parts of the country that have not had this kind of pressure until the last year or two are slowly catching up. The industry itself continues to educate the contractors that are out there, but I think Mark hit on it very well that also our customer, the purchaser of smart water solutions, also has to help drive that down to their maintenance contractors. That we as a company have made an investment in this smart solution in order to save money and save a vital resource, and we expect you to learn how to use that. So it's kind of a two-way street, but the industry itself is actively moving in this direction and pushing the training, and we're also trying to help that out with the HydroPoint University.
Okay, the next question I have here is, how will this benefit a city in regards to cost savings and passing those savings on to customers?
We work with cities across the U.S., and the primary benefit is help keeping water rates low for people living in those cities. Cities can protect their revenue, tiered rates and structures, reduces water handling costs for them, having to move water resources around in order to deal with the irrigation use, potentially during peak periods as well. And overall general savings to the district and to the city, and reduced energy consumption, reduced water use, and then of course those can be passed along as potentially not increasing rates or a lower tiered rate structure for the citizens of the district.
All right, the next question we have, if you are a landscape contractor with multiple sites with smart controllers, can you manage them from the same page on the WeatherTRAK system?
Yes, under your login with WeatherTRAK Central, you have access to all the controllers under your login. So whether it's multiple controllers on one site or multiple sites with multiple controllers. So you have a view to all of those on the controller list page. You can see every controller that's assigned to you under your login. And then from there you can select any controller to go to either the manage page or program page to make adjustments. If you were looking to do reports, you can go to the reports page and select any controller and run any report that you would like for those. So yeah, you can see all of those from your login.
Another question here, how do you compare the cost of planting native and adaptive species versus installing a smart water management system?
This is Mark. I'll address that question. I think in a ground-up development, I would consider both of those best practices, and they're becoming pretty commonplace. I did make the point, though, that with the plantings, you do want to balance the water use requirements also with something that's going to be durable and withstand the foot traffic that they may see in a shopping center. But generally, in a new development, that's not the issue. I think both of those are becoming best practices. But in a retrofit situation, to go into an existing property, whether it be a shopping center or a commercial office building, an apartment building, anything with a landscape area, and tear out healthy plants, whether they be turf or shrubs or trees, and replace it with species that are lower water use is extremely costly versus an irrigation controller or smart water management initiative, which is a much more cost-effective implementation in an existing property for a retrofit.
Okay, the next question, what issues have you experienced with use in diverse geographic locations?
A good question. So a couple different things. I think it's safe to say in states that are, or geographic areas that have been more exposed to smart water management, places like California, the Front Range of Colorado, where the end users, the landscape and irrigation professionals, have been exposed to the technology, we've seen better saving results. We have expanded our program from those markets into newer markets like Texas and Florida and the Southeast, and while we're still seeing great results, the learning curve is steeper for the contractors that have not had experience with those types of controllers. Other geographic factor would be, in the upper Midwest and the Northeast, where your irrigation season is much shorter, and even during the irrigation season, you get a lot more natural precipitation. You go back to the economic criteria, and we may not be spending $20,000 a year at a property for irrigation, but may only be spending $3,000 or $4,000. So the cost benefit may not make sense in all geographic areas.
Okay, another question. I am already working with a landscape company. Can they install WeatherTRAK for me?
Yeah, absolutely. One, you have to engage with them if they have the technical skill to do so, but HydroPoint Data Systems provides a pre-installed training program, so we can certainly help a landscaper through the learning process on how to install WeatherTRAK, how to set it up, and how to get it programmed. So yes, you can use your existing landscape contractor.
And just to add to that, I mean, I would encourage it. I mean, assuming that there's somebody that has been responsive to your needs. Like I said, I think to get their buy-in early, get them involved with the process is good. Now, the flip side of that is if we've had some contractors that just have not responded well to the new technology, and especially in this economy, it's time to find somebody else that is willing to work with the technology and not just be an irrigator, but really be a smart water manager.
The next question is, how do you effectively manage the system when you are in a municipality that has water restrictions for both days and hours, for days and hours of the day when you may irrigate?
Well, so you can manage that with the WeatherTRAK ET controller. You can set it up for if you have 2-day-a-week restriction or 3-day or every other day. All of that has the ability to be programmed into the WeatherTRAK controller. You set a water window, whether you have restrictions or not. We operate the controller under a water window, and the controller will only irrigate within that window. So it's easy to set up to meet the restrictions within a city or a water district. In many cases, you can apply for an exemption. Some locales may already provide an exemption for weather-based irrigation controllers. If you're checking the website or talking to the agency, you may hear the term WBIC, which is W-B-I-C, which is Weather-Based Irrigation Controller. So yeah, it can be quite effective working in within water restrictions.
Next question here is, how would we go about setting up a pilot program in our city to test the cost savings and sell this to our council?
So we have 23 public agencies that have proven WeatherTRAK saves more water than any other conservation method. That's why cities all over the U.S. have selected our solution. City of Newport Beach is a big one. The WMWD, Western Municipal Water District in Southern California, has a weather-based irrigation controller program using WeatherTRAK controllers for both residential use and commercial use. So for a pilot, you can contact our marketing department or our sales department, call WeatherTRAK, or email us at support@hydropoint.com.
Great. The next question I have here is, how long does it take to get up and running with the system?
Well, I'll let Mark provide some feedback, and then I'll provide a short answer on just the technical side of that. Mark wants to apply that to a site situation.
So, yeah, I mean, it can be done extremely quickly. The question is, how far along are you in your due diligence? But there's the process of deciding what technology works best for your needs. Well, first, what are your needs? Finding the technology that meets those needs. Finding out which sites are the best candidates. And if you go back to the slide deck, and I told you what criteria we used. But basically, you're looking at your economic criteria and then some site-specific issues, looking at the availability of rebates. But once you've done that due diligence, it can be done extremely quickly. Obviously, in places that shut down the irrigation systems for the winter, it would not be a good time to be installing the new controller because you want to be able to test it once it's been installed. But yeah, it can be done as quickly as you want it to be done.
On the short side of that, the physical installation of the controller and having it up and running and immediately available to save water, average time to install a single controller, low station count would be 4 hours, and the higher station count would be 5 hours. So in essence, once you've pulled the trigger and the truck is rolled to the site, in half a day, you're now achieving water savings with a smart controller.
Okay, the next question I have here is, what do you know now about smart water management that you wish you knew when you started this initiative 3 years ago?
So I assume that's addressed to me. And I think for the most part, I covered these in the lessons learned, but let me see if I can summarize. I think one thing that we had to overcome was this sort of presumption that we were going to see a constant 30% savings at each and every site. If you compare this type of technology to some of the stuff we've done with energy efficiency, it's a lot less predictable. Because the weather is a lot less predictable, where if you put in a new energy savings device, there may be some impact from the weather, more hot days, more cool days, but it's a lot more predictable. So that's one thing, and I've had to have that conversation with some of our local folks of, hey, why, I thought you said this was going to pay back in 2 years, and they're looking at only one site in their portfolio that may not be saving any water, because again, either they had a really good contractor that was applying the right amount of water using conventional controls, or perhaps the site was being underwatered. So you have those instances. And I think the second thing that we would do differently is, initially we didn't prioritize flow sensors. really just sort of overlooked it altogether. And then as we started to implement more properties, we set a threshold that said, okay, if we can install a flow sensor as part of this system for X amount of dollars, then it's a good investment. Well, if I had to do it all over again, I'd now be at Y amount of dollars because that part of the solution has really proven its value. Yeah, there are no guaranteed savings, but the insurance policy is extremely valuable if you have a catastrophic mainline break.
Okay, so we were actually just about at time for what we allotted for this webinar. If we did not get to your question, all the questions will be passed along to Mark and Chris. They could try to follow up as best they can by email or phone. On behalf of your hosts, Retail Traffic, along with our sponsors, HydroPoint and Regency Centers, let me thank you all in the audience for your time and attendance this afternoon and for all the great questions. And we hope you have a great rest of the day.